So we were told to increase our views as well as our interactions with our videos that we've been making, that we need to make cat videos. We're gonna make cat videos today, but not kitty cat videos. Catalytic converter videos. Cat for short. The purpose of a cat is to reduce the harmful emissions. So the stuff that goes boom inside the cylinder head comes out and goes directly through this catalytic converter. And what it does is it reduces carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, all those harmful exhaust gases that would normally just go out the tailpipe, go through this cat. And over time, the cat gets hot. It'll heat up to about 800 degrees. And that's when it's most effective, is when it's at its hottest temperature. And the precious metals that are inside the catalytic converter actually cause a chemical reaction to happen with those harmful gases that make them safe as they exit the tailpipe. And that is the main purpose of the catalytic converter, is to reduce the harmful emissions that are coming out of the vehicle to the best of its ability. So without a catalytic converter, you're gonna have increased air pollution, you're gonna have a much louder exhaust, it's gonna sound like a race car, you're definitely gonna have a check engine light on, and it's gonna fail an emissions test. It will not pass an emissions test without a catalytic. Cost of catalytic converters is all dependent on design of catalytic converter. For example, this would be a manifold catalytic converter. This bolts directly to the cylinder head. So when the exhaust leaves the cylinder head, it goes through this port right here and then runs directly through this catalytic converter. This style is one that you would not be able to put a universal in per se, because you can't cut this out and then install a new catalytic converter and have it clean. There's also different designs where you'll have two cats that are on a Y-pipe design. You'll have a flange on the front side of it, and then it'll wrap around in kind of a Y-pipe design, and then a flange on this side of it, and those will bolt directly to the manifold. You'll have a couple bolts that are coming through with some nuts on the backside, and you can just bolt those right up. The issue with those is let's say the passenger side fails, but the driver's side is still good. You have to change them both just because that's the way they're designed. It's not very easy to cut those and put different cats in. And when you buy them from the dealer or the factory, that's how they're designed and that's how they're sold, is as a Y-pipe whole configuration, a complete assembly. The average cost of a catalytic converter, like I said, it really depends on design, but anywhere from $500 to $3,000. $500 would be just putting a universal, cut it out, put a new one in it, and move on. Whereas a factory OEM equipment catalytic converter would be more in the $3,000 to $5,000 price range, depending on design. If you had to do two, it's definitely going to be more expensive. We do like to stick with factory catalytic converters just because longevity. They're a higher quality part with a lot more of the high value metals that are in them, and they just do a better job. They last longer, and that's why we stick with factory stuff, is just because you're money ahead. You'll go 10 years before you ever even maybe have to consider talking about doing another catalytic converter, where if you were just put a universal catalytic converter in, it could be 6 months, it could be a year from now when that cat fails just due to lesser quality material inside the catalytic converter itself. Cats are made up of precious metals, and some of those precious metals are platinum, palladium, and rhodium. Those are extremely expensive, and that is the biggest reason why cats are so expensive. That is also the reason people want to steal them. There was over 64,000 catalytic converters stolen in 2022 across the nation, which is a lot. Times have changed where the recycling rules for a catalytic converter, it's harder to get away with stealing them. There's a little more documentation that you have to provide. We actually had a customer, she went into Walmart. She was in Walmart for about 15 minutes, came back out, and her Toyota Prius sounded like a race car. And it's because her catalytic converter was missing. Within the 15 minutes she was in the store, somebody managed to cut that out and steal it from her. And so she had to come in here and we had to get a new one put in for her. But I cut a catalytic converter in half just because it makes a little more sense when you can see what they look like on the inside. And this is where all the precious metals are contained, is inside this little cylinder, which it's not very big. It's got a bunch of little honeycomb ports in here though. And that's where the exhaust gases flow through, and the chemical reaction happens inside here, and as it exits, it's a cleaner exhaust. There are several conditions that can cause a catalytic converter to fail prematurely. One of those conditions would be misfires. When a vehicle misfires, there's raw fuel, it's unburned, it's liquid still. And when that goes out of the cylinder head and goes into the catalytic converter, you're basically just dumping water on these little itty bitty teeny tiny ports right here, and it'll plug off. And over time, if you can't get flow through this section of the exhaust, your car won't run. You won't accelerate, sometimes won't even start. So it's really important to take good care of your vehicle in that way and do your preventative maintenance like tune-ups to prevent misfires, because your average tune-up is anywhere from $200 to $600 depending on the vehicle. That's a lot cheaper than $3,000. So signs of a failing catalytic converter is going to be poor engine performance. You get in it, you start it up, you hit the accelerator pedal, and the car just doesn't move. That is a sign of a failing cat. That's also a sign of some other things. A persistent check engine light, we call them P0420 codes. When that goes away and comes back and goes away and comes back, that's usually a sign of a failing catalytic converter. Poor fuel economy. If you don't have good flow through this catalytic converter, it's going to increase the fuel used to make your vehicle move, which is going to reduce your fuel economy. The other thing that can be a sign of a failing catalytic converter is poor engine performance. Just lack of acceleration. Like I said earlier, sometimes the vehicle just won't start at all. We've had a couple vehicles come in here where the complaint is, my vehicle won't accelerate. We've actually removed the catalytic converter from the exhaust system and then went and drove the vehicle, and it drives just like it should, which further condemns the catalytic converter. And that's just because, like I said, these little ports right here, they're not very big, they're very small, and it does not take much to plug these up. Another thing that can cause them to fail is burning oil. If you have oil that's making it into the combustion chamber, it's going to make its way into the exhaust. Oil is a very residue when it gets burned, which can cause a film, further restricting airflow into the catalytic converter. Coolant, if you have a head gasket problem and you have coolant entering your exhaust system, same situation there. As coolant gets hot, it kind of turns into a sticky, almost honey-like substance, and if you were to coat this with honey, you're not going to have any airflow there. So can my catalytic converter be cleaned instead of replacing it? In some situations, yes. If there is light carbon buildup, which happens in all internal combustion engines, there's no way around it. You can do a fuel induction service, and that's the only service you can do. That's a chemical that is safe to run through the combustion chamber as well as your exhaust components and won't damage any other components. If you start using other aggressive cleaners, you can actually damage other components. Even though it's going to clean your catalytic converter out, you can damage other things like EGR valves, fuel injectors, things of that nature. So yes, you can clean it. Usually though, if the check engine light comes on and it's setting a catalytic converter code, there's not much more you can do. It's time for a catalytic converter. But you can try a fuel induction service, and it's a 50-50 shot. It might take care of it for a little while, or it just might not, and sometimes you're just money ahead to just change that catalytic converter. So what can I do to get the most life out of my catalytic converter? There's preventative maintenances you can do. A tune-up is one of the very important things. Keeping your spark plugs in good condition so that a misfire condition is not present is probably one of the biggest things you can do. A regular induction service, I recommend doing them every 15,000 miles, especially on GDI vehicles. But just doing it regularly keeps that cat clean. It runs that chemical through there and keeps things moving like it should. If you have a cat code happen, it's really important to get a professional diagnosis, because cats don't just fail out of nowhere typically. Usually there's an underlying issue there. So by just replacing your catalytic converter, if you don't take care of the issue that initially made your catalytic converter fail, you're probably going to be faced in the same situation again. So it's really important to take it to a professional facility that knows about that and is looking for those things that, why did this fail and what do we need to do to make sure that it doesn't fail in the future. Catalytic converters are one of the most important emissions equipment items on your vehicle. It's also one of the most expensive emissions equipment items on your vehicle. It's important to do your preventative maintenances and do what you can to get the most life out of those. And if you do end up having to replace your catalytic converter, it's best to get as close to factory quality as possible if your budget allows. Thanks for watching the video. If you have experienced any of the things that we've talked about previous, whether that's lack of acceleration or maybe you've even had your catalytic converter replaced, let us know down below. Let us know what it costed you.